And now I would like to invite Margot Cameron to come forward to light our chalice. What isn't Margot in this church? Margot is a member of the choir. Margot is also on the worship arts team, lay ministry. What else did you tell me? Oh, the pantry. And in Margot's outside of the church life, she is also a member of the duo Kit and Caboodle with Chris Thompson. A wonderful person. Go ahead and share the chalice lighting.
I light the chalice with these words. Open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Open our minds to learn what is true. Open our hearts to love one another. Please join me in the affirmation of covenant, which you will find printed in your service, saying, love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other.
Thank you. Stephanie Finn Judkins, aka Farmer Finn, as I've said, has been my friend for many years. Many of you know my oldest daughter. Finn was my oldest daughter's first babysitter and proceeded to lock herself out of the house with my baby.
Maddie was a very loud child.
Yeah, still is. But nevertheless, I continued to talk to her after that. And I'm kidding. So what can I say about Farmer Finn? Her skills are wide and many. We knew her first as a fellow actor. I have directed her on stage. She and Greg played the lovers in the Fantastics when they were young that I directed. I directed her as Little Red in Into the Woods, where she was fabulous. I've actually never seen a better Little Red.
That was really good.
Yeah. But then there's this whole other part of Farmer Finn. She, when she moved to Little Rock and we reconnected, she began working with Heifer International, leading their education program at one time, leading the, and it has gone out of my head, the gardens at one time. She basically, if it needed to be done at Heifer, she probably did it at one time. And then now, you know that she runs her own ethical farm where she cares for those animals like nobody's business. She also built from scratch her own tiny home, and she continues to do performance art and comedy through the Soma Sideshow. She is truly a Renaissance human in all the ways. And now, we are very grateful to have her as our DRE and to speak to us today. I introduce you to Farmer Finn.
Well, that's it. Monica said it all. Thanks for coming. I gotta be honest, I've performed in front of literally thousands of people at a time, and I've never been more nervous to do anything in my life. So the vulnerability is real, you guys, and it's not my forte. I did not grow up on a farm. I grew up farm adjacent. We, on all sides of my family, grew up sort of generationally impoverished. My Uncle Jess, who was in World War II, he was a fighter pilot and was captured for 3 years by German troops, ended up keeping the farm after the war was over. So I was able to, in my very young days, actually hang out in the house that my great-grandparents built and homesteaded in Oklahoma. So that was my first taste of side-eyeing farm. It didn't work anymore because Oklahoma wasn't much for growing things for quite a long time, specifically in that space. And then my Uncle Howard and Aunt Linda, my granny's brother and sister-in-law, always had this incredible garden. And my Aunt Linda, though prickly herself, was an incredible canner and preserver of things. So I'd spend weeks out of the summer just hanging out and picking things out of the garden and watching her can things and handing her things, because you shut up and you just hand her things. Thank you, Aunt Linda. And then my cousins hunted, because you didn't just go to the store and buy things. So the cousins hunted, and we used that. And my Aunt Peggy and Uncle Dub had a bait shop behind the house, which was the only one in town, and their son, Hokey, had a taxidermy shop. So there was always something going on, and the cycle of food was never really lost on me. It just was part of how things are. I learned to drive on a farm, and not because my family had one, but because when my grandfather and grandmother, they worked at B.F. Goodrich Tire Company forever. They were planning to retire from there, but it closed one day, and everyone lost everything. No pensions, no nothing. So nearing retirement, they had nothing left. So my granddad started working at a farm. And since my mom was a single mom, I was with him all the time. I basically just lived in his pocket. He was my best friend and my soulmate, and still will always be. But I learned to drive because he had an old Dodge 1976 pickup truck. And I was a little tiny thing. I'm not big now, I'm standing on a box. But then I was real little, so he'd move the seat all the way back, and I'd stand up and drive around hay bales. And he always had a roll of toilet paper for me, just in case. We moved to Missouri for a little while after leaving Oklahoma. Before that, one of my stepdads had done something stupid, so we ended up living in an RV in my aunt's yard for a little while until my mom got tired and she moved us to Missouri. I've been performing my whole life. I started in dance when I was 3 because I couldn't walk a straight line and kept falling down. So the doctor was like, put her in dance class. It'll sort itself out. So I can still twirl, but don't walk a straight line because I'm probably going to bite it. Performance was just kind of what I was expected to do. I came out of the womb singing and whistling, so there was never a question of what I was going to do. My granny was like, get it. She made me costumes and sent me singing in clubs and bars and as a little kid, and just put me in these contests, and I was like, this is great. There was always a band, and there was always somebody cheering me on, you know? It was fantastic. That's just kind of what life was. In fact, when I had my braces taken off at 15, I think I was 15, I lost my retainer. And my mom said, we cannot afford to buy you another one. So my granny booked me a show in Branson for a night so that I could make enough money to pay for my retainer. It was gold and silver glitter in polka dots. It was fantastic. You didn't see it unless got. I was in my teens and early 20s, a vegetarian for 12 years. 12 years. And my question was, how can I eat meat knowing that someone has to kill that animal? And how should I ask someone to do that if I can't do it for myself? So I've been pondering this for a long time. It wasn't until later in life, in further examinations, that what I recognized was a desire to not kill animals. That was a lovely excuse. But most importantly, being a vegetarian was a really convenient way for me to hide eating disorders. So that was no, I can't eat that. I'll just have this lettuce. And so that continued for a long time until I was living in New York. I lived there for 8 years. I did a few random things. One of the coolest things I did was a revival of Rags with Stephen Schwartz. So I got to meet him and work on this piece, and it was pretty incredible. I worked at literally every piano bar in Manhattan. Name one, I worked there and probably made bad choices there, but I had a lot of fun, you guys. It was a pretty good time. I had a show called the Kitty and Sissy Show where a friend and we just played all kinds of songs. She was a very good pianist, and I could sing anything, so we just did whatever we wanted and had a great time, because that's how I like to live my life. What do I feel like today? Fantastic. Once that got a little bonkers, the speed of New York and the choices I was making in my life, I realized I had gone there not to pursue a career, but to evade the reality that was my life. To evade a mother who was ill. She had diabetes when I was born, and I watched her constantly suffer with that and make bad choices. And as a child, you just sort of accept those difficulties. So I moved back to Missouri, and I taught theater classes at a community college, and I taught dance and theater and acting and taught voice lessons at some theaters in town, and that's all I did. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Sometimes because of rehearsals and being in a show and doing whatever, I was literally up for 48 hours at a time with naps here and there. If you know the theater, that's just how it works. You've got a deadline and you just make it work. You figure it out. I actually did a show where I had walking pneumonia, and I had my doctor off stage giving me shots in my butt so I can continue on, because that was just what I had to do. You weren't going to tell me I couldn't do it. Then my mom died. And all of that anxiety of waiting for this moment my whole life, sleeping next to her and putting my hand on her mouth to check to see if she was breathing in the night, that dread was finally over, and there was a strange sense of relief and sadness. Because now I had to mourn the woman who I'd grown up with as a child, who was vibrant and healthy and did what she could and tried her best, and also mourn the woman who she'd been for the last 10 years, who was not the same. And then my grandfather died. And I didn't know anything about myself anymore. The two souls that grounded me, that tethered me to the earth beneath me, were gone. And it just so happened that a couple of weeks after that, just before my grandfather died, in between those times, Monica and Greg came to Springfield, and we did a reunion show for a theater that we used to work with. And I don't know what happened. I hadn't been thinking about it beforehand, hadn't crossed my mind, but Monica and I are standing and looking at each other, and I just said to her, Monica, I think I need to get out of here. Can I come live in your yard for a while? And she said, yeah, that's great. As Monica said, if you know her, she's private and likes her space and doesn't want a lot of fuss, and this is her space. So for her to say yes immediately was borderline miraculous, and probably the best thing that's ever happened to me, to be honest. So I became the hippie in the yard of vegan yurt dwellers. I feel like that's an accomplishment. I don't know if anybody else has that on their list, but it's definitely on mine. So while I was there, I ended up getting in contact with Rebecca, who gave me a space at the ranch. And that was really my first experience actually physically investing in any kind of agricultural scenario. Anyway, I got to touch and be a part of gardens. I got to tell children about, here's where your food comes from. And always that voice in my head saying, if I can't kill it, can I eat it? What is the line here? Where is the ethical space in this? And it's plagued me always. And then after I left the ranch as a volunteer, my friend Sarah, whose property I still live on, was like, why don't you, I didn't know what I was going to do, you guys. I'm like, I can't go back to just doing theater because that feels not right to me. What feels right is continuing to be outside and learn what this is. So she said, why don't you come and just like live in the shed, the back of our property, and you can, watch the animals and just kind of help us farm, because they were both working at the time. So that's when I got to have my first experience with a pig having babies. And I'm in the woods in the dead of winter, and it's snowing, and I'm alone, and I've never done this before, and she goes into labor, and I'm like, oh my God, 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 oh my God. So I call my friend Will, and I'm like, okay, she's having these babies. He's like, okay, if there's a problem and she looks like she can't continue this process, you might have to go in and help her out. Can you do that? And I thought, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And so, of course, as is my way, I said, yeah. Sure, yeah, I can do that. So sure enough, there's an issue. So I get into the position, and I ask all the questions, and before I get off the phone with him, he says, now remember, when you go in there, those piglets have teeth, and they might bite you. So that's what's going on in my head. And I see her struggling. She's having a hard time. She's clearly not going to do this on her own. So I suck it up with quite a few and I do it, and I can feel the baby, and immediately I'm out again, right? Because I'm like, oh God, it's going to bite me. Because that's all I'm thinking. Teeth, 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 teeth. But I get in there, and I don't know how it happened, but I hooked my fingers under its little jaws, and I just pulled. And when that baby came out, I have never cried so hard in my life. After that, she had multiple babies, and everything was fine, and it all worked out. But I thought, I am amazing. I cannot believe I just did this. And I also knew if I don't help her, she's not going to make it, and neither of the babies. So I have no choice but to do that. And those moments are when we know who we are. That's how you know I am this person. There is no choice. I will make this decision. So then, not knowing that I was going to farm here, I somehow ended up with a job at the ranch. So I thought I was just going to be side farming, and I ended up going back and working at the ranch for another 2 years, where I learned more about gardening, more about pigs, more about goats, more about chickens. I got to discuss it more. I got to learn that the average age of a farmer is 65 years old, and if that is true, we are hosed. Our farmers are not here anymore. What we've moved to is industrialized farming, large scale, where there's no face, there's no humanity, there's no life. It's just a package wrapped in plastic on a grocery shelf that we have no consciousness of. And that is not ethical, in my opinion. So I got laid off from the ranch. And I thought, I've got a couple of options. I've got some savings. I can move. But I had Plushenko. And if many of you have met Plushenko, my goat, she's the reason I exist to this day. She is my best pal, and she gets everything. So I decided to just build her a farm. That's not a joke. That's just really like, all right, well, let's just have a farm then, Sugar Bean. So then I decided, well, I've got enough money. I can have a year to just kind of think about things. Let me see what happens. So I was like, let me just build my tiny house. And I got about halfway through it, and I started raising pigs because my friends Darren and Luis, who are also friends from the ranch, they're my family, they started a food truck, and they were going to sell meat, pig. And I thought, well, they're going to buy meat anyway. So they can either buy it from Costco, where they don't know the farmer, they don't know how the animal's treated, or I can raise pigs for my friends. And so I did. And still that question in my head when I started, can I take them to process? Which means kill them. Can I do that? I still don't know. Until that moment comes, I don't know. I just know that everyone that I raise for my friend is one less animal that has to grow up on concrete, one less sow who has to give birth in the confines of a metal cage where they can't roll over, one less pig that doesn't get a belly rub every day. And mine do. Sincerely, I lay on them. Like we snuggle, we have cuddle parties. The definition of ethical: 1, relating to moral principles, pertaining to or dealing with morals or the principle of morality, pertaining to right and wrong in conduct. Ethical behavior respects the dignity, diversity, and rights of individuals and groups of people. Animals are people too. Ethical farming refers to the practice of producing food in a way that protects the environment, public health, communities, and animal welfare. My boar got sick and died about 18 months ago. And I was in search of a new one. I don't know what happened to him. If you want to know how hard it is to burn a body, ask me questions later. So I needed a new boar if I was going to continue. So I'm in Perry County. A man showed up at my farm, and apparently I'm known now in Perry as like the goat lady. That they call me the happy goat lady or the pig gal. I'm fine with that. And he shows up and he says, I hear you lost your boar. I got one, and I'm looking to get some new genetics. Do you want to buy mine? I'm like, well, I actually have some intact males. That means they're viable for reproduction. If you want to trade, that works out for both of us. That's great. So I think this is fantastic. We're all set. So I go to his farm to have a look at this pig. And I cannot describe to you the overpowering smell that I smelled walking up to his pen. He was in an 8x8 metal, fenced space, no access to clean water. The mud was up to the center of his belly. From belly down, he had no hair, and the flesh was pink and raw and in horrible condition. And my heart collapsed. And so you have to be very careful when talking to people, particularly in really poor areas of the country. Because the fact is, sometimes you just don't know any better. And that was the case here. This had been a way that they had always raised pigs. It's just how it is. It's just a pig, right? But I looked in this pig's eyes, and my first thought was, there's no way he can live like this. He's going to die. But he had a sparkle. Like there was something in his eyes. So I obviously went around and I started grabbing up as much grass, because outside of it, there's just acres and acres of lush green grass that this pig could have been eating and mulling over and chewing on and laying in. But he wasn't. He was in a mud pit that smelled like 14 outhouses that had never been cleaned. The kind of smell that stays in you for days at a time and you can't get it out of your skin. So I said to him, I'm really sorry, but There's no way I can let one of my animals live like this. So I left there, walked away, and I happened to be having some dinner with some friends of mine, and I was broke. As per the usual, every penny I have just goes right back into the farm. I got $2, I buy a T-post. It's just the way it works. And so I was telling my friends about what this was, and one of my friends said, well, here, go, I'll give you the money, go get him. He can't live like that. He can't. So I thought about it for about 24 hours because I thought, is this too much to ask of someone? And I thought, is it too much to ask to let someone help me save this pig? That's not too much to ask. So I got the money and I went, and it took us 2 days to get that pig into the trailer for me to drive him home. When I got him in, it took me 3 months to get him to let me touch him because he just scooted away and wouldn't do it. Today, he's put on about 100 pounds. He is all kinds of hairy. He goes by the name Frank Reynolds and grunts at me and loves nose scratches. He lets the neighbor kids come in and hang out with him, and he loves back scratches, and he's lovely. So he's with his first lady. They're having slumber parties now. So to me, that's ethical farming. Is there death involved? Of course there is. There's still going to be. And I don't like it. It makes me very sad, and it makes me very uncomfortable. I go out every day, and every single day that I am with the pigs, I think about the fact that I choose their last day. I pick it. I know it going in. And I often wonder if it's right. But then we go back to the definition of ethical farming. Farming refers to the practice of producing foods in a way that protects the environment, public health, communities, animal welfare. It's a practice, not a finite solution. So I know that what I'm doing does make a difference. It means that my friends can take care of themselves, can take care of their employees, can take care of me, all while these animals don't ever have to live a day on a concrete pad. In fact, they eat eggs out of my hand. I go out and sit in the fields with them, and they all come up and we lay in the sunshine together, and some of them, when you rub them on the belly, they lean on me and kind of slide down so they're on their sides, and we just rub bellies. My rule is they have one bad day. Can anybody promise any of you that your whole life you're going to have one bad day? No. But that's what I promise my animals. And it is hard. The hardest days are the ones, the week that leads up to when I have to get them in that trailer to take them to the processing. And they have names. I name them because that is respect. I'm asking them to give up their lives so that the rest of us can live or practice living in a more ethical fashion. I'm asking them to do that. And it's hard. The first batch I took in, I made my friend Luis drive me so that I could cry while I took them there. It's gotten, I won't say easier, but my acceptance of it has changed a little. And I don't put them in the trailer for hours at a time. They go in a couple hours before we drive away. They get every moment outside to wallow in the mud, to have an extra snack, to get one more belly rub. And I don't know if it's right. I don't know. What I do know is that when my vegan friends come out to my house and understand what's happening, they still see a farm full of love and care and compassion and kindness. They also see a few pigs that probably should have gone a while ago, but I'm just a sucker. Like Violet Beauregard, who, bless her heart, has an attitude about everything. All attitude all the time, that one. So they have one bad day. I think a lot about becoming a vegetarian again. I still can't process an animal on my own. I can't do it. I can't be the person in that moment. But I'm making peace with that. I know that when I take my pigs in to the processing center, I know the guys who do that job are lovely people. I also know that when they get there at 4:30 in the morning, before they do anything, they gather around outside and they pray. They pray that it goes well. They pray for each other's families. They pray for the safety of the animal, that it goes quickly and everything goes smooth and there is as little suffering as possible. And that gives me a little peace, because that end moment, if it's not done with respect, then I can't do this anymore. And there might be a day where I wake up and think, this is one too many. I can't do it. And I've been there a few times. Because there is not money in farming. But that's beside the point. The point is that I know my energy, all of my thoughts, all of my physical pain and activity and anguish, all the cuts on my body, all the bruises, all of the mental stress from trying to do this means that one less animal has to suffer with our intentional ignorance, with our refusal to understand where we are in our food system, with our societal refusal to consciously think about the fact that this chicken in front of me was alive, that this pig in front of me was alive and smart and doing things. So I'm going to continue to do it as long as I can. And I'm going to continue to ask myself, is ethical farming even possible? I don't know. But I'll try to find it. I'll try to find the space where it is possible. Until we all as a society decide we don't need to survive off of this anymore. It's not impossible, but it's not going to change today. No matter how much we want to, no matter how much we want this practice of animal slaughter, which is what it is, to end, our society will not allow it. So what do we do in the meantime? We do this. We try to raise them as good as possible, as ethically as possible, as safe as possible, with as much human kindness and dignity as possible. And we support local farmers. And we think about where things are coming from when we get it. It's not just a piece of meat wrapped in plastic on a shelf. It requires someone to raise it. It requires someone to process it. And it requires other people to separate it and package it out so you don't have to think about the fact that it once had a face. And that hurts. That's an uncomfortable feeling. And I get that because I think about it every day. And that's it. I didn't know I was going to grow up to be a farmer, but I kind of, if I'm being honest, I had an inkling. that it was headed in this direction. But it took me a long time and a lot of different paths and a lot of adventures and a lot of crazy choices to get to this point. And I couldn't do it if I hadn't taken that weird, twisty journey. And it also brought me here to you. So, and I'm real glad. So I hope you all realize that you're paying me to be here, but it also is going right back into that farm. Every penny of it. So thank you. Yes, go ahead and applaud me. I love it. So I would like to say a few, all of the animals on the farm wanted me to say thank you. So thank you from goats, Dory, Breezy, Danny DeVito, Thorin Oakenshield, Temple Grandin, Beans, Adam Michael, George Weasley, Little Dolly Parton, Beverly D'Angelo, Esperanza Peanuts, Moonspot, and Plashenko. Pigs, Little Red, Cordelia, Sweetie, Violet Beauregard, Miss Roxy, who is the picture still up? That's Miss Roxy with her newest babies. They're 2 weeks old now. There are 8 of them. She did a killer job. She nailed it all by herself. Her sister Shadynasty. I have 4 older piglets, Polka, Alice, Rosalie, and Biggie Pigowitz. They're Jewish. They try very hard to stay kosher. And of course, my boar, the absolutely spectacular rescue, Frank Reynolds. If you are It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia fans, you can see literally all of them are probably named after that. Chickens. Peg, Baby, Little Richard, Teeny, Lady Cluck, and the rest. There's probably another 150 who don't have names other than get out of the feed. And the turkeys, Alan and Poe. There used to be an Edgar, but he is no mo. My dogs, Chaplain Sue and Duplo, and Pumpkin, who's my neighbor's dog, but she just moved in with me because all the animals move in with me. And my kitties, Little Bug, and my neighbor's cat, Odin. So thank you very much.
And I invite Margot to come back up to extinguish our chalice as we read the words in unison printed in your order of service. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings. Amen, namaste, blessed be, go in peace. And please join us in Thompson Hall for coffee and conversation.